because you're in a fight and you just got hit with a hard shot. That doesn't mean like you could be concussed, but you can still fight. How many guys like go to war and their whole face is just mashed up and they're still going into the 5th round with a broken nose, their eye closed, like almost closed. Like it doesn't matter. They're still allowed to fight. Welcome back. I'm Zach Raymond. This is Christian Hawes. This is episode 5 of the Sanabul Fight Buzz podcast. And today we're going to be breaking down the Ankalaev and Walker card at UFC 84. I'm excited for this one. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, man. I think we deserve to see this fight. It was kind of a weird one.
Yeah, and we'll get into that one at the end of the card. But yeah, I mean, to start, like, this is a good night of fights. Like, there's a lot of good matchups on this card. A lot of very, very skilled guys. I'm super excited for the whole card, not even just the main event.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of feels like one of those cards where you have a lot of like up and comers, maybe some guys that don't have the most amount of clout, but some guys with like a breakthrough chance, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, to start it off, we got 3 banger fights on the prelims that we're not going to dive too deep into, but we have Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's the former MLB player, I believe. Heavyweight. He's really, really fun to watch against a legend and a vet, Andrei Arlovsky. I'm sure this is going to be just a stand-up war, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, with a minus 600, that's a heavy odd.
Yeah, I wouldn't even blame them for making that the odds, to be honest.
Yeah, especially at heavyweight, man. It's so hard to tell because Arlovsky's a vet, obviously, but I mean, at heavyweight, it's like it could be anybody's fight. That might be a dog to pick. I know Arlovsky's long in the tooth, but
yeah, Acosta's he's super explosive and fun to watch. He's not one of the more like very technical and skilled heavyweights. He's not bad. He is super, super fun to watch, and he's very athletic, obviously from that athletic background there. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. Next up, we got Matheus Semmelsberger. It's another fun one against Preston Parsons, and then probably the most exciting prelim, I believe, for sure, is going to be Gaston Bolanos against Marcus McGee. We got Marcus coming out of the MMA lab in Arizona, a teammate and sparring partner of Sean O'Malley, and another fighter on this card, Mario Bautista. And then Gaston Bolanos is very close to the brand as well. Former Bellator fighter, very, very good striker and grappler all around. So this is going to be a very exciting one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, coming off a quick KO too in the first round of his last fight. So that's, yeah, I mean, hot one to watch. Absolutely. You tune in.
All right, for starting off the main event, we got Phil Hawes against Bruno Ferreira. We'll dive into this one quite a bit, but not as much as the other ones. But Phil Hawes, his last fight was in May, and he had that knockout loss to Ikram Aliskerov. Yeah, I mean, Ikram's an up-and-coming prospect. It's hard to blame Phil for that one. He's been done pretty well in the UFC for sure. But yeah, again, that fight against Ikram did not go his way.
Yeah, and it's too bad because like it actually, I thought it started off going really well for him. He looked really good in his stand-up, and he was using that like open side body kick really well because they had opposite stances, and I thought he was doing that well, and he was coming over top of Ikram's lead hand with his he's southpaw, so he was coming over top of that right hook really well. He hit him with that like 3 or 4 times, and then I think he just got caught with a head kick, and I don't think he quite recovered because you could see him sort of drop at his hands, wasn't getting his guard up, and then but no discredit to Ikram because he landed a perfect 1-2 to put him away. So you're right, Ikram's on the rise.
It was in the middle of like a scramble too, and Ikram's super quick and athletic, and I think he got hit with a knee in the clinch, and then he got to let go, and then Ikram just popped back with the 1-2 really, really fast, which isn't something you really see at a middleweights that often. So, I mean, yeah, it's a tough one to take away from Phil Hawes. He's very, very good, and this fight, I think, is probably not going to dive into it like until we go over Bruno, but I think this probably might go his way.
Yeah, and I think it's just looking at Bruno versus him, I think we're going to see a stand-up war here. I think it's going to be – I actually think this has potential for fight of the night on the card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, diving into Bruno, he's 10-1 in his pro career. His last fight, basically breaking down his style, he was like switching stances over and over again. He almost looked super spazzy. I don't know if it was the moment or what, but I feel like if you're going 3 rounds with that pace and that type of style, it was almost like looking like Sean O'Malley at middleweight, but just switching those stances over and over again, feinting constantly. And even when he was at a range, I felt like his fight was against Ruzaboyev, and it felt like he was just waiting on him, and he was just watching him change those stances, watching him do those feints, everything. He was at a range the whole time, and then he stepped into his range and just got dropped with that right hand. So,
Yeah, I saw he does have an interesting footwork style for a middleweight. I noticed that in both his fights, like he's only had 2 in the UFC, and his other fight with Rodriguez, he did a similar thing. He was constantly switching stances. To your point, like not really giving the guy a lot to go off of, just feints, things like that. But I guess in the latter fight with the range difference, to your point, it's a lot easier for him to sit back and just wait for that shot, because even if he's standing at a range doing this switch stance stuff like that, it's not really causing any threat. So then he just waited for him to throw that low kick, caught it, and a lot of power in that one shot to put him down too.
Yeah. I mean, what I kind of think about when I see someone like this is like when you see guys at the lower weight classes doing this, they're popping, hitting shots in and out of range, pop, 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 and then still moving and landing shots at the same time. It seemed like Bruno, he's doing that movement and those stance switches, but he's not really doing anything with it. And I feel like at middleweight, you can only do that for so long. Like you're going to start to gas after quite a little bit of time.
Yeah, and I guess like the whole purpose of those feints is to get reactions and to get hesitations in guys. And I actually thought to one point that he did a really good job in that. That's kind of how he got the finish over Rodriguez, is that he got Rodriguez had Bruno's back against the cage, and he threw a hook and missed, but then he almost used that as like the setup for 2 more feint hooks. So he missed like a right hook, threw a half feint left, half feint right, and it almost got Rodriguez like, what is he doing feinting hooks?
Yeah.
And then the third one came and caught him clean and knocked him out cold. So it was like he has a weird style, but then I thought in the second fight that he just strikes me as like, because he doesn't have a ton of fights yet, and I mean he just strikes me as like not super sharp and clean with his striking yet. But I think with that style, once he develops and spends some time, like some more time in the cage, like he's gonna be a killer.
Yeah, and I want to know your thoughts kind of on the differences within the styles as you go up in weight. I think as you move up in those weight classes, it requires a lot more patience and in my opinion, a lot less of that style. Like as you go down in the weight classes, you see more and more of the successful guys with that style, constantly moving, constantly feinting, doing that stuff. As you move up, Alex Ferreira, he doesn't do that. He stands almost still with his hands at his chest. Sean Strickland, same thing, stands there, like not really feinting, not really switching, not moving, not much footwork as you move up in those weight classes. Same as like John Jones, like he was very patient and just not lethargic, but I guess just like thinking a lot more and less of that constant movement and being bouncy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Obviously, it takes a lot more energy to be like to spend moves, like to spend motion on feints and bouncing around and things like that. So I guess when you get heavier, you want to conserve as much energy as possible. You're also slower, so it's probably harder to get reactions off those feints. But you see like Brandon Royval, that guy never stops moving. Like the whole time he's fighting. Like he could be way out of range and he's still doing the little feints. Even Sugar, like it's all about feints because they need that like splits. All they need is that the smaller guys, I guess, they need the split second in like reaction time where they can find that gap and finish the fight, which is crazy. But
yeah. And another thing is if you're fighting a guy like Bruno and you're his opponent, like you're Phil Hawes looking at this fight, you're not gonna really bite on those things. And it's different if you're fighting against a Sean or you're fighting against a Brandon Royval and they're doing those things and they're just flicking that jab and popping you with it over and over again, or front kick, and they're so fast that you have to react. But with someone like Bruno, if he's doing all that movement, he's not really flicking you with his jab or popping you too much or really giving you a reason to react. If he's coming in and out of that range, that you have way more time to like hit that counter shot, which we saw in his last fight.
Yeah, and I think one of the big advantages to the stance switch all the time is that like every time their opponent switches stance, they have to kind of reevaluate what's going on and where their power is going to be, right? Because it's all about like where that power is going to come from. So when he's constantly switching stances, the guy in front of him's got to think more. But So I do see an advantage in that. I think he just like if he could get really sharp, like if he gets super clean and really accurate and more precise with his striking, I think it could go really well. But I just think that Phil Hawes has got a little more experience and he's a little more technical with his striking. So in my opinion, I think Phil's going to get it done on the feet.
Yeah, I think so too. Moving on, we got Ricky Simón and Mario Bautista. Talk about movement. This is going to be a very, very fun fight to watch at bantamweight here. Ricky Simón's one of my favorite fighters, and so is Mario Bautista. Both of them seem like just super great guys, and both very, very fun to watch and very skilled. Ricky Simón, he's a threat, and I've always thought of him as a threat. He came into that Song Yadong fight actually as a favorite, which if you were looking at that now, you'd be quite surprised at that. I was surprised when I saw that too, but that was in April last year. So a lot of stuff has changed since then. That was Ricky's last fight, so he's taking some time off. But yeah, I'm super excited. And then Mario, his only losses so far have been to Corey Sandhagen by armbar and then Trevin Jones by TKO.
Yeah, I mean you're right. This is got the makings of a really good fight too. Holy man, when you look at Ricky Simón, it's hard to believe that guy's a 135er, isn't it?
Yeah, he's
Like
massive.
he's so big, like his legs are huge, and like obviously it shows in his strength with his wrestling because the guy is a beast. Like his back, like it reminds me of I don't know why, but I always refer to Islam with the back, like the wrestling. Those guys get like so built through their back, like all that strength from wrestling forever. I mean, you can see it when Ricky gets a guy up against the cage. It's like you can tell he's strong, and I'm sure that's probably going to be something he's going to look to do here over Mario. But we got two guys who both know how to win, so.
Yeah, and I was going to say it's Mario's biggest test, but he fought Corey Sandhagen. But I feel like at this point, fighting Corey Sandhagen now would be a lot different than fighting him when he did. But Ricky, like, is going to be a very, very hard test for Mario. Like, he has finishes over Merab, Asuncao, and then Jack Shore as well. That fight against Merab was crazy. And thinking about that now, that's a very impressive win.
Yeah, it was a TKO win over him, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Especially like to see what Merab's been able to go on and do. That really does speak volumes to him as a fighter. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then moving on, we have Jim Miller, the vet, the legend, also wants to fight at UFC 300. It seems like he's 36-17 now, and he's going to be fighting Mowgli, so Gabriel Benitez here. Gabriel's coming off a recent TKO win to Charles Ontiveros. I watched that fight recently as well. That was a good one. But yeah, Jim Miller coming into this one is yeah, I mean, this is going to be a fun fight, and this is obviously Gabriel's biggest test so far.
Oh, dude, that Jim Miller is a dog. He is the definition of just game bred. I mean, oh my goodness, he loves to scrap. And like, honestly, for his age, I can't even knock him. Like, I just feel like his last 3-4 fights, like he's been looking good. Like, I have no reason. Even the decision loss to Hernandez, I'm like, holy, that was a fantastic fight to a guy much younger than him. He went to war. I mean, he was piecing him up too. It was just a little more strategic from Hernandez, but like, Jim just gassed a bit. But I'm like, I think there's a lot of fight left in Jim Miller, and he said it himself. He doesn't think he's going to retire after 300, which I don't blame him. If he keeps performing, like, why would the guy think about retiring? He's killing it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, this one is kind of a scary fight for him because Mowgli's very, very powerful on the feet. I think Jim Miller's strategy probably going into this is going to be to get him down. I think he probably thinks that he has the advantage on the ground here because he's a vet on the ground. He's very, very good there and seasoned, and he knows what he's doing. That experience is going to play a big role in this, especially if he gets him to the ground and then Gabriel starts panicking or needs to get up, and then he takes him down again. As those takedown and the wrestling exchanges happen, Jim Miller's going to have that experience over him and be a lot calmer in those situations.
Yeah, and I did think that Benitez showed a lot of experience in his last fight, like against Ontiveros. He was getting did you see those axe kicks he was getting hit with? Like some of that spinning stuff, and the axe kicks. I'm like, this guy, but it didn't take long, like I don't know, like half a round before Benitez realized okay, I have to close the range on this guy. He stands down. He's like, I know what I have to do. Get him against the cage, make it dirty, make it ugly. He did it, executed honestly perfect against a guy who, if it would have stayed at range, probably would have pieced him up most of the night. And he's like, he knew what he had to do and got it done. So I'd hope that they have a similar game plan set up for Jim, but we'll see. I'm taking Jim, but we'll see.
Yeah. I'm taking Jim too. I think Jim's going to have the experience here, and I honestly think he's going to probably win the grappling exchanges here, and I think he's going to force them. I don't think he wants to trade with a guy like Mowgli because he's super, super powerful and has that knockout power. And it's not like Jim's chin hasn't been tested over the years. So I think if he's playing it smart here, he takes him down and then wins in those grappling exchanges.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we got Matheus Nicolau and Manel Kape. This is a rematch. Their first fight was honestly okay. So Nicolau won the split decision. First off, I think Manel Kape won that fight. Did you see this? Feel the same?
Yeah, I thought he did well. I do.
Yeah.
I thought he got the nod.
Yeah, and it felt like at the start of the fight, Nicolau found some early success with those takedowns, and then Manel started to see them coming a little more. Maybe as Nicolau gassed out, but those flyweights the reaction time and the takedown defense on Kape's end was very, very impressive. And he dominated the stand up the whole time. I don't see this fight playing out much differently.
I agree, and it's kind of funny because you'll hear them say about Nicolau that he's a slow starter. He's a slow starter. I thought in their fight that
The opposite.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, but then once Manel catches his it seems like obviously he's a counterpuncher just from watching him fight. Like you can tell he's waiting for the perfect opportunity. But once he kind of downloads, I like to think of it as like downloading the data, like that first round of like figuring out their timing and their range and things like that. Once he dials that in all his other fights, he's the same way. Like once he gets past that first round, he figures that that's when he starts to turn it on. So in the second and third against Nicolau, it was the same way, and I thought he got the nod as well. But he's a beautiful guy to watch fight and so comfortable at range. Like you'll see him like just slipping out of punches, and like a punch is like an inch from his face, and there's no flinch, there's no blink. He just knows exactly where he's at. So he's one of those guys that it's so fun to watch.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like for a striker like Manel coming into a fight against someone that it's almost very clearly a striker versus grappler matchup, I think there is the thought in your head. And like Sean, for example, like going into that Aljo fight, he was talking about over and over again how that's all he thought about was just don't let him take you down. Don't let him take you down. And then when he stuffed that first takedown against Aljo, I feel like that just boosted his confidence immediately. And he's like, what am I even worried about? I can strike with this guy, and if he shoots on me, I'm going to stuff it. And it seemed like that happened in that Manel fight too. When he didn't stuff the first takedown, but when he did stuff a takedown, he didn't get taken down. I don't think he might have gone taken down again during the fight, but he got right back up. It wasn't like he was getting dominated on the ground. So I feel like going into this rematch, he's going to have that confidence that he knows he can defend those takedowns and piece them up.
Yeah, and that's totally fair, and I agree. That's the confidence is a huge thing. I would say to Nicolau's defense would that be I did notice he does tend to use a lot of feints at takedowns. Like he does the level change feint quite a bit to get people to react. Like he did that against Matt Schnell, and that was like he did have in my opinion, a slight striking advantage over Matt Schnell. Like Schnell was a little bit,
I agree.
I don't know, maybe slow in that fight, but he did a really good job at feinting the takedowns to throw that. And I mean, if I was him and I was game planning for this fight, that's what I would be looking for, because you would think that Manel's going to be looking for the takedown, so you'd think he's aiming for the takedowns to strike. But I hope it plays out the same way the last fight went. That was awesome. That was a great fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight for sure. Unfortunately, I don't think the decision went the way it should have. But yeah, I mean, before his Nicolau's recent loss to his last fight was a knockout loss over Royval. He had a 6-fight win streak, including a win over Schnell or Kape. So I mean, Nicolau's nothing to sleep on for sure. I think this could be a very, very close fight again. But I do think it's another grappler striker matchup, and it just depends who wins in the spots they want to win in.
Yeah, and I would say that I would be a little curious because that KO loss to Royval was nasty. That knee he slid in, hit him with, and then backed out. Like Royval's movement. Crazy. So I think that might be kind of on his mind too. And you're going against another guy who has really good movement and really good striking in Manel. Like, I don't know, that might be on your head. Maybe you're thinking about it coming off a loss like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and then finishing off the card, we have another rematch, Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev. It's in the desert again. So hopefully nobody asks Johnny any questions.
Just don't talk to him, all right? Let him fight. Yeah. Don't answer. Let Kavanaugh answer all the questions.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, we'll talk about that, but I think in the last fight, Johnny looked better than he normally does when it comes to just controlling himself, like controlling that pace, controlling the craziness that he does have. And then Ankalaev, honestly, I was super impressed by his striking. Like, he is very composed. He has a very solid base, and he's quite technical. Like, I think Ankalaev was winning that fight, like as it was going on, and then unfortunately, obviously that thing that ended the fight. But I think with those leg kicks, Ankalaev was doing a little bit of a job with that. But yeah,
Yeah, I thought that Johnny Walker was doing a really good job with the leg kicks because obviously Ankalaev holds a lot of weight on that front foot. He prefers to
mm-hmm.
box more. From what you can see, I think that's probably the game plan that John needs to look to. To your point, I think he needs to avoid getting as crazy as he can because although those crazy like that. Like he almost caught him with
The
that
flying
flying
knee.
knee off the fake injury. I'm like, which would have been amazing, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like you do something like that, you miss it, and then that gives Ankalaev the chance to get a hold of you because like obviously that's his game plan is to get a hold of you to press you against the cage to press
Mm-hmm.
you. So any sort of like miscue or like scramble, it's just going to end up with Ankalaev on top of you, and then we're going to see 5 rounds of you getting.
Yeah. And the longer
Yeah.
it goes with you having a hold of Johnny Walker, the more he loses the very thing that makes him good.
Yes, it's that sporadic like
Yeah.
craziness, right? Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I'd like to see Johnny Walker get it done. Ankalaev's kind of like the boogeyman of the light heavyweight division. Like you look at all these top contenders, and it's like, who do you like? You see them, oh, they have a really good chance against, this guy, this guy, this guy. It's like, well, who would they not want to fight? And it's like Ankalaev is like the one guy in the
Yeah.
top five that all these guys are like, well, stylistically, he's not a good matchup. Like,
100%.
so, but I don't know
But
either
yeah,
way.
I mean, talking about how the last fight ended, we had Ankalaev like holding Johnny down, and then he hit that grounded knee to the head, which was obviously illegal. It didn't even seem like Johnny reacted at all. He's just like, "What the hell was that?" kind of thing, like just like touched his face and looked up, and then ref stopped it, and then yeah, the doctor tried to talk to Johnny. There was a language barrier, and he decided that was time to call the fight, even though Johnny didn't look like he was even dazed from that knee.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious, what do you think? Do you think there should be like an on-spot appeal process when that kind of thing happens? Because it feels like everybody who was involved felt like it should have been reversed and they should have kept fighting.
Yeah, I think that the ref just needed to have a little bit more, or the doctor needed to just have a little bit more common sense when it came to like the language barrier, and maybe ask some more questions, like better questions than that, or not even ask questions at all because you're in a fight and you just got hit with a hard shot. That doesn't mean like you could be concussed, but you can still fight. How many guys like go to war and their whole face is just mashed up and they're still going into the fifth round with a broken
Hmm.
nose, their eye closed, like almost closed. Like it doesn't matter. They're still allowed to fight. So with Johnny being full of adrenaline, having the language barrier, and then also being hit with a hard shot, it's like, okay, he doesn't answer your question. That doesn't mean he can't fight.
Yeah, you think that there may be maybe some other signs of like the concussion protocol that
Like
they would have
falling
looked
over.
towards? Yeah, but he
And
looked
even then,
pretty well.
yeah, like even then, even if he was like a little dizzy, it's a fight, and that's okay. Like I think personally, that's okay. If they stopped the fight every time someone got dizzy, and half of the fights, even more, would be stopped like in the first or second round.
Yeah, and it was kind of weird. If I remember correctly, he had, was it one hand and then a knee and the foot of that same leg down, and that's what made it 3 points, is that? It was
Yeah.
kind of weird. He was like back against the cage, one hand down, knee and a foot.
Yep.
So it was kind of a weird one. Like it wasn't like blatant like Peter Yan over
Yeah.
Aljo.
Yeah. On both knees. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you don't hear some guy behind him yelling, "Do
I think
it!"
as long as you have one hand on the ground, they can't knee you.
Is it
So he
one
had
hand? Oh, I
both,
thought it was 3 points of contact. I wasn't sure, which would make
because you'll
sense if it
see
was.
guys against the cage and they'll just lean over and put their hand on the ground, and then they can't knee them to the head. So
Oh,
the three
okay.
points
I
of
thought it
contact would be
was,
the
yeah.
foot, and the hand.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I thought Johnny had his like left leg up, one leg down, and then
Yeah,
the
he
hand.
did.
Anyways, yeah, it's
Yeah.
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I feel like just let the guys fight. Like obviously I think everyone feels the exact same about that, and hopefully they don't ask him where he is, because he's probably going to stay in the desert again, because he is in the desert. So
Honestly, I don't know if yeah, verbal question should be the defining answer we need here.
yeah. Yeah, that's the card. I'm really excited for that one. But we're gonna move on to some other UFC news. We got some fights announced yesterday. We had Dustin Poirier against Benoit Saint Denis. I mean, what are your first thoughts on this?
I didn't know that Dustin Poirier, like honestly, it tells me a lot about him. I didn't know where he was at. I kind of thought that Poirier was at the like super fight part in his career. I thought maybe he
Yeah,
was going to sit and wait for a Nate Diaz or maybe the Conor fight again or something like that. Like, or I just thought maybe he was kind of not going to be the guy to give other people a chance. But this just shows you how much of a dog Dustin Poirier is to take a guy on like him. Like it's crazy.
yeah. I mean, he's a dog, but like, do you think it's a smart decision for him?
It depends what he's looking for, I guess. Like, do we think that Dustin's going for another title run? Because like, if he has a convincing win over Saint Denis, what does that mean? Does that put him right up
Not
there again?
much. No.
Yeah, yeah. Because Saint Denis is what 13?
So what's he going for? Because this isn't a big money fight.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good question. I don't know. He's been quoted as saying like he looks for fights that like get him out of bed, right? Or like challenge
Yeah,
him or
which
scare
this
him. You know what I
does.
mean? Yeah, like to see a
Which it
guy
makes
like this
sense.
coming up. So I don't know. Maybe there wasn't. It's hard to believe there's not a money fight out there for him. Like it's hard to believe that they couldn't convince Nate Diaz to come back and fight Dustin Poirier like on a
I'm
fight night
sure
of
there
its own or a pay per
was.
view.
But another thing is maybe they want Dustin to be like a gatekeeper at this point. Maybe they want him to be the reason Benoit Saint Denis becomes a star or becomes moving up those rankings. Because if Benoit wins, then he's right up there in the talks for sure.
Yeah, which is too bad because this is exactly like you're saying. This is like they don't. I don't think they usually do it. It doesn't feel like they usually do it to like to top guys this early. Like I could see if
Yeah,
Dustin lost like another fight and then they'd throw him like this. But like he only lost to Gaethje. Outside of that, he was one fight away from a title fight at all times. Like he's always
yeah,
like for the last 40 years he's been that guy. Like yeah, it's a tough one. Good on the UFC to make the fight happen. Maybe they're paying him well.
yeah. I mean, it would make more sense if it was out of desperation and they were paying him really well because of UFC 300 and they needed to stack that card. But this is on UFC 299, which is really weird.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. 299 is shaping up to be an amazing card, and I don't like. I know we'll get to it. We'll get to it, and I'll leave it be for that. But I don't know
Yeah,
what they're gonna do for 300 because 299 is shaping up. Like
it is. I don't know how they can beat it with 300 for sure, but I'm assuming and hoping that they have a plan. If they're putting this on 299, they must have a plan.
it's got to be something big, especially to your point of like getting Dustin out of bed or like getting him to come and fight, and to put him on 299 instead of 300
Instead.
because you're totally right. This would have been like a huge draw for 300.
Yeah.
I I don't know. I don't know. This is a weird one. I'm looking forward to it because I love to watch Dustin Poirier fight. He's an absolute dog. He's one of the best boxers in the lightweight division by far.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a scrap.
Yeah, it's also kind of crazy that because they didn't need to add anything else to UFC 299, at least nothing exciting. They didn't need to. Like they already had this. I don't think this is going to add any pay-per-view buys. Well, not any, but not very many compared to the amount that it could add to 300. Obviously 300 is going to get a lot of pay-per-view buys regardless. But I mean, it's not going to add that much considering how many people are already going to buy this card.
Yeah, it was already stacked pretty well. It is a curious one. I am, to your point, I am really curious what they're offering Dustin here because like he's been him and Hunt, but he always says like I want to fight, and then but it just feels like there hasn't been anything as of late that's been that interesting to him. So I
I
don't know.
believe he
I'm
gets
very
pay-per-view
curious.
points, right?
Ah, okay. Well,
I
that could be a
believe.
part of it. But you
I
think if that was the case,
believe.
he'd want to be on 300.
Yeah, but 299, that's going to be a high paying one too.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
they've just decided that's what they're gonna do. Just stack 299
I guess. Yeah,
and
we'll see.
300 is just a flop.
Imagine. Just Connor. That's it. But that, yeah, I mean, they did add one really, really exciting fight to UFC 300 yesterday too. Oliveira against Sarukian for the number one contender fight. This is one of the best fights we could have asked for.
Yeah, this is great matchmaking by the UFC to get this deal done. Like absolutely crazy. I mean, what better way to justify? Because it almost felt like Dubronx maybe wasn't justified another title shot. I know he. Don't get me wrong. What he did to Benio was fantastic,
Yeah, I
but
agree.
if he does this against Sarukian, it's like there's no doubt because like it just felt
Yeah,
like that Islam defeated him soundly, unfortunately to me, especially to submit him. Like it was a bit of a disappointment to me. And I love Drew Bronx, and I'm taking him in this fight against Sarukian. Actually,
Yeah.
I think this is awesome. I think it's a great way to get this. I just wonder what do they have for Islam? Is Islam set up with anything right now?
No, actually, I saw something today. Dana said that he was injured, and then Ali was on a podcast and said that Islam's not injured and he wanted to be on UFC 299, and then he blamed Sean for that, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I guess Islam's not injured, but Dana said that he was.
That's a weird one.
Yeah,
that is a very weird one. I don't know. I could have seen if they like mix it up and went with Islam versus Leon for 300. That would have, but then maybe. I know we have Bilal, so yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
I mean, this matchup specifically, I think there's a lot in it for both guys. Like, this is the best fight Armin could ask for, and this is the best fight Charles could ask for at this point, other than Islam. But I don't know if Charles wants to fight Islam right now. Like, I don't know. If he takes a loss to Islam, he probably won't get another title shot, maybe ever, at this point in his career. If he beats Sarukian here, that could set him up for that title shot, whether Islam's there or not. Maybe Islam is out with an injury. Maybe something happens to Islam, and then Charles gets a easier fight matchup against someone else on for the interim belt.
Yeah, and I guess like that's a really good point, because like title shots don't just get handed out unless you're Colby Covington. But yeah, I mean, like it's like it's a good point, because who better to test your skill against in terms of like a high level wrestler who can also strike than Sarukian? He's like the next best thing to Islam in the division for being that kind of that well-rounded, like that almost like carbon copy of the same style of fighter, right? So I think you're totally right. This is a win-win for both guys. Like,
yeah. And then other than that knockout loss for Islam, Arman Sarukian was his toughest test so far in the UFC. So Volkanovski. I forgot about Volkanovski.
Yes.
Other than Volkanovski, right, Sarukian has been his toughest test in the UFC. That fight was crazy back and forth. So I think if Arman wins this fight, whether it's a split decision, anything, if he wins this fight, he's well deserving of that title shot against Islam too. Absolutely,
yeah. And you did see Sarukian winning some of the wrestling exchanges in that fight, which is like, that speaks volumes. You got a guy like Islam who can just wrestle his butt off all day, and then for Sarukian to come in, and he's obviously got better since then as well. So you'd love to see these two guys meet again.
Yeah, and how do you see this fight playing out? You think it goes to the ground a lot? You think we see a lot of those grappling exchanges, or you think it's kind of a stand-up banger?
I kind of hope it's a stand-up banger, because like there's something about Oliveira's striking that is just so clean and like technical to me that I just love to watch him strike. Like, yeah. So I really hope they stand up, and Oliveira has this weird way of like, because his striking is so like technical and sound, that it doesn't look like he's swinging hard or pushing a punch hard. Yeah. He just connects with guys right in the right spot, and just like he's dropped like some of the best lightweights in the world. Like it's unbelievable. So I love to watch Charles stand up. He's also a beast on the ground, so I'm good with it either way. But I'd love to see these two guys. Sometimes you see guys like, you get guys who are really good on the ground, and for some reason it like negates their styles, and they just stand and bang, and I love that.
Yeah, I would honestly, both guys are really good stand up. Like Arman's striking in his last fight was super, super clean too. If this is a stand up fight, I think it's over in the first or second round. To be honest, I think one of them lands clean. Charles is known for being dropped. Like, no matter how much I love him, he gets dropped a lot, and then he always comes back. Well, he doesn't really get knocked out flat. I don't know if he ever has, but he comes back, but he gets dropped on his butt, and then he just sits there and waits for the guy. So I mean, Arman could take advantage of that, but I don't know how much Arman wants to mess with Charles on the ground.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that was a similar thought when he was going to fight Islam. I think everyone had the same idea. Like, yeah, Islam can get on top of him, but what's he going to do when Charles is throwing up submissions off his back, left, right, and center? And then Islam just grabbed him with that crazy strength. But I mean, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Arman has a little bit of a different grappling style than Islam too. I don't know if Arman has as much of that like raw strength as Islam does. I think Arman's very, very technical and likes those like scrambles a little more than Islam does, and so does Charles. So I think if it goes to the ground, there's going to be a lot of scrambling, and if it's stand up, it's going to be a back and forth banger, I think. So I think this one's probably going to end in the finish.
I totally agree. I doubt this
Yeah.
goes 5 rounds. That would be, or is it 5 rounds? Is it?
I don't
It's not
know.
a.
They didn't. It's not the main event,
Oh wow, a 3 round banger.
but they
Wow,
could
that
put
would
it
be
as a co-main
crazy.
and put it 5 rounds too.
That'd be wild.
Yeah.
Either way.
But yeah, UFC 300. Like we could talk about some other predictions that people have talked about. We've heard Askren and Masvidal. What do you think about that happening?
I am not interested in watching Ben Askren fight Masvidal in the slightest. Not
I
even a
can
little
completely
bit.
agree with that. I don't know how much Askren has changed in the last 5 years.
Well, we saw him against Jake Paul. You see all those
Yeah.
memes about standing
Oh
at the end of your
God.
bed.
Yeah. I hope it
Yeah.
doesn't happen. But if it does, like I'll watch it. It'll be funny, at least.
Yeah, I would watch it. I would just be disappointed if, and I don't mean any, but like if that's the main event at UFC 300 of
Oh
Masvidal versus
God. I
Askren,
don't think
5 years, like, you know what I mean? Five
Yeah.
years later than it's supposed to happen.
I'm not even watching that card if that's the main event. I'm not. If
Yeah,
Charles and
yeah,
Armin is the co-main for that,
that'd be
5 rounds
hilarious.
of Askren and Masvidal.
Yeah,
Gosh.
no, I don't know. I don't know what they can do. It seems like obviously Connor has announced his return in June, which seems to be legit at this point, but I don't know what
Yeah.
the other options are. I think Alex is the only other guy he's one of the only guys we don't have locked in, and Jamal Hill, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple people up in the air. Like people have said stuff about Izzy's looking big. Maybe that move up to light heavyweight. And then there's Aspinall who doesn't have a fight yet, who's been asking for one too. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff up in the air. I think Aspinall gone could be a good fight to be on that card. I don't know
What about
what.
Aspinall's Miocic?
Yeah, but for what? For Aspinall to defend his interim belt? Like that sucks.
Yeah, it would have to be. I think because like it'd be hard to give Gone the interim shot with
Has that ever happened?
to unify. Did that happen with? I'm trying to think of the light. How did the whole light heavyweight thing go down with Kiri and Glover
Glover?
and
He
Jan
just
and
took the
all
belt.
that?
That was just up for
Yeah,
grabs in the air. But that was the belt
yeah.
belt.
Okay, but that got messy for a while. That's the thing. So like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna strip John here because he's injured. Give. Are they gonna maybe say this is for the
I don't think
undisputed
they
belt
stripped John.
between Tom and Miocic? Like, wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah, true. I don't think they do it. They don't want to risk pissing John Jones off at this point, like they
Yeah,
did with Francis. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but I think it would be tough to ask that of Aspinall to defend that interim belt and waste another fight in a risky division against whoever it is. They're going to be a tough fight. Um, for what though? Like to maybe get the interim belt back again? I feel like there's nothing in that for Aspinall there.
No, I do agree with you. I just think that like all of our like big openings for big fights are in the light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions. Like all the
Yeah.
smaller weight classes are kind of tied up. Like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of big opportunities here.
Yeah, like we have Max, who's definitely an
Oh
option.
yes,
He's up in the air right
right.
now.
I think we're gonna see. Yeah, okay. We'll see Max. I think you're right on that one. I
Yeah,
totally forgot about him. But I think they have to have for 300. They've got to have a. There's got to be a Brock Lesnar. There's got to be a Conor, a
yeah,
Ronda.
someone
You know what I
coming
mean?
back for
There's got to
sure.
be some
Yeah,
pop.
Ben Askren,
Yeah, Ben Askren, big names. I want Brock
Dylan
versus
Dennis.
DC
Yeah, let's see
at
DC come back.
280 pounds. Let's go.
But yeah, anyways, thank you guys for watching. Christian, another good episode in the books. I'm looking forward to this card, Ankalaev and Johnny Walker, and we're going to recap this next week, and then we'll have our predictions for UFC 297.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes. 97's next. Sean
sweet.
Strickland.
Sounds good. If you watched to this point, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you think. Thanks, Christian.